The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Democracy has spoken and the French people have placed the Rassemblement National and its allies in the lead and virtually wiped out the Macronist bloc.
A very warm welcome to this Monday edition of Squawkbox. We are live, as you can see, from Paris and London as global election coverage heats up. These are your headlines.
France's far right wins the first round of the snap parliamentary election, securing 34% of the votes as rival parties rush to try and block the Rassemblement National from power.
Well, let's take a look at the euro. Extraordinary, actually. The euro's hitting a 10-day high. You might have thought it might go in the other direction, but traders digesting the result after the French-German 10-year bond spread widens to its most since 2012.
And the UK enters the final stretch ahead of Thursday's election, with the opposition Labour Party looking to get a landslide victory then and end 14 years of Conservative rule.
President Biden holds the look after a disastrous debate performance spurs calls for the Democratic nominee to withdraw from the race. And Boeing confirms a near $5 billion deal for supplier Spirit AeroSystems, with rival plane maker Airbus set to receive compensation under the agreement.
Very warm welcome to you. Well, on any other occasion, Karen and I would be poring over the first half of the year straight away at the top of the show, looking forward to the second half. We'd be poring over what on earth's going on at Camp David with President Biden and his family. We'd be poring over the fact that the UK general election is just a few days away and it could be a meteoric shift in opinion. But right at the centre of our coverage today is France. Marine Le Pen's far-right national rally has emerged as the leading party in the first round of France's parliamentary election, taking nearly 34% of the vote, according to exit polls. Now, that result marks a significant setback for the president, Emmanuel Macron, and his centrist coalition, which garnered just over a fifth of the vote, putting it in third place. And you can see here, Les Républicains under a lot of pressure. By the way, thank you to the graphics team. I don't thank you enough for these great charts as well. Anyway, they're third place behind the left-wing New Popular Front, which secured around about 30%. The result sets the stage for intense political negotiations ahead of Sunday's second round runoff. Now, the results put the national rally closer to a position of power than ever before, increasing its projected share of seats from 88 to more than 200. But the key here is, will they get to an absolute majority? And it looks at the moment like possibly not. They need 289 seats needed in the next runoff to get that majority. But experts are warning that seat projections after the first round can be inaccurate, especially given the high voter turnout. Really was high voter turnout, and days of horse trading to come. Who's the horse trading going to be mostly between? Well, we think between the leftist party and the centre. Will some of the candidates drop out to give either of those two a better chance at beating the far-right parties? Now, the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen, said the results could spell the end of Macron's centrist bloc.
Democracy has spoken and the French people have placed the Rassemblement National and its allies in the lead and virtually wiped out the Macronist bloc. In an unambiguous vote, the French people have demonstrated their desire to turn the page after 7 years of contemptuous and corrosive power. We warmly thank the voters and welcome this result. This first step towards choosing an alternative is a mark of confidence which honours and obliges us.
And there are so many things that make French politics so interesting, but what happens next with the leftists? This is fascinating because Jean-Luc Mélenchon could be arguably one of the most important people at the moment because he can work out whether his enemy's enemy is his friend, etc., because, quite frankly, he doesn't particularly like, does he, what's going on with the Macron government? But does he dislike the prospect of a Marine Le Pen government even more? This is the key, because Mélenchon is the leader of the far-left France Unabowed Party and part of the new Popular Front. Now, he said the bloc would agree to withdraw candidates if it means defeating the far right.
In accordance with our principles and consistent positions in all previous elections, nowhere will we allow the Rassemblement National to prevail. And that's why, in the event that they come out on top, while we only come in third place, we'll withdraw our candidacy. In all circumstances, wherever and whatever the case, our instructions are simple, direct and clear. Not one more vote, not one more seat for the Rassemblement National.
Look at this. Isn't this interesting? You might have thought that, given everything that's going on, the euro would be under a bit of pressure. Is this about the dollar side of the trade? Is it about the fact that people are looking at some of the data and looking towards all that huge data? By the way, on another occasion, we'll be looking forward to the huge amount of data in the US. We'll get to that this week as well. But the euro is up 0.4%. In fact, if you look at the range of the euro dollar, it is stately. Unlike the spread between bunds and OATs. What are OATs? It's the 10-year French paper. Let's take a look at the spread here, which is now at its widest level in a very long time. Actually, the spread, that's a great stat actually, in 3 months is up 56% according to our stat up there. But it's currently trading at 80 basis points. One being at 2.5, the other one being at 3.3. My goodness me, Charlotte, this gets absolutely fascinating. Take it away. I know you've got a guess. Just give us your commentary, and I'm fascinated to hear what you two have to say.
Well, just very interesting. Just 3 weeks ago, President Macron calling this snap election after the bruising defeat his party suffered in the European election. Did the gamble pay off? Well, for his party, certainly not. We see that they are very much suffering from those results, at coming third in the national results in terms of percentage at around 21% of the vote, and certainly the far right confirming their momentum. Now, did the gamble pay off in keeping the far right out of power? Well, the question is still out there. It's unclear. They did certainly come top in this first round of the election at around 33% of the vote between the Rassemblement National and its allies, and the turnout was historic as well. 66% of the vote, so it's the highest in 40 years. So people did come here massively. A lot of people see this election being absolutely existential for France, and deciding the direction for French society going forward. So a lot of interest here. Certainly the number gave some clear results for the far right, but what happens next really is the question, because as you were saying just a little bit earlier, how does it work out this week before the second round? There will be a record number, what is called triangulaire, which means three-way runoffs, when you have a far-right candidate against two other candidates. So now the negotiations are happening whether the third candidate in those constituencies drops off in order to give their votes to the second candidate and try to block the far right. And that's what is all at play today and tomorrow. The final list of candidates has to be presented tomorrow evening. So we're waiting to see negotiations that happen there. What we heard from the left-wing bloc and from Jean-Luc Mélenchon yesterday is that he called for his candidates to step down when they come third in constituencies and to vote for any candidate against the far right. The message for President Macron's party was a little bit more unclear. They didn't give some very precise voting directions. They did say we need to block the far right, but they didn't call to vote for the left-wing bloc in any case. So some people are criticizing Macron's bloc for that. So we'll have to wait and see how those things play out. But certainly when we've seen the projections for the far right in either way, they don't reach the absolute majority as of now. Again, we have a lot of very difficult to project, but as of now, they wouldn't reach the absolute majority. So the picture is kind of quite blurry of what would happen. The scenario looks like no absolute majority for the far right, 3 blocks in a hung parliament. Things could be difficult to govern. So we'll have to wait to see what happens this week, because it will be absolutely crucial. But I'm very pleased to say that I'm now joined by Sébastien Paris-Horvitz, who's Director of Research at La Banque Postale Asset Management. Thank you so much for joining us early this morning, trying to give us a bit of insight in the result last night. So what did you make of the results, and what do you think then we could see based on this in next weekend in the second round?
Thank you for having me. For sure, this is an historical moment for France, as you just said. It's the first time since Second World War II that you have the possibility of the far right taking power in France. The elections, in the end, tells us pretty much what we knew before, which is that the most likely scenario remains a hung parliament. Still, France has no experience with that. Generally, you have a majority to govern France today or maybe tomorrow after the second round. Maybe we are not going to have such a majority, and so we have to figure out how France will be governed. The good news, I never tried, but is that the Constitution has a clause where you can run the country even without a budget. So you carry on with the previous budget and you can pay pensions, you can pay everything. Still, there is no reform, etc. So today we have this situation in France where we don't know what really people want. At least 33%, as you said, want to have a change with not clear policy apart from immigration. But for the rest, we know that the policies that the other parties are offering are very different. So today the situation is for a hung parliament, that has been the bet, and for France to carry on without major slippage on the budget.
And many analysts and economists have said that actually a hung parliament, in the possible scenarios of a far left, far right, or hung parliament options, a hung parliament for France's economy and for the market is the least bad option. Is that your view as well?
Yes, I mean, it's the least bad, but again, as I said, without a government, you cannot make reforms. And in a critical moment for Europe, where we have problems with the external threats, with defense, you have the global warming and the energy transition, all these issues, we don't know where we are going to go with, in particular, the French-German engine, that we don't know how things are going. So again, that's true that a hung parliament is maybe the best option for markets, and we might see exchange rate to stabilize here. The big premium, unfortunately, on French assets might remain. First, we see the spread between the 10-year French bonds and the Bund, and the German Bund, will remain, in our view, elevated. And some of the assets linked to bonds, banks, some of the utilities, we could still see them remain kind of in a doldrums, although we see if we have this hung parliament in 1 week, things might recover a little, is our view. Still, we have a situation in Europe, as you know, where we have seen a little recovery, so this is positive for the future if politically we have some stability.
What would a hung parliament mean as well for public finances and the deficit? We know it's an issue with France. There's the excessive deficit procedures been launched by the Commission, the downgrade from S&P, etc. If there's a hung parliament, there's no big decision on budget that can be taken. So what does that mean for public finances?
Yeah, that's a big issue, a big question mark. We don't know actually. Indeed, France needs to reduce, I mean, as we have this procedure of excessive deficit, France needs to close its deficit by 0.5% every year on the structural deficit. I mean, this is a difficult concept, but it has to adjust. With the current situation, if indeed we have a hung parliament, we don't know how this will happen, what type of tensions we'll have with the rest of Europe, that we don't know. So it's one of the reasons why the market might remain a little cautious on France, but still seeing Europe as, again, going forward with some kind of stability. Remember, the elections we had for the Parliament, the European Parliament, you know, we had a kind of status quo. So I don't think things will change there, but still, for France, there are many question marks going forward.
And in case of a far-right government, it looks unlikely, looking at projections, but cannot be ruled out completely just yet. What would that mean if the far-right and Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National, Jordan Bardella, becomes Prime Minister? What would that mean for France's economy and potentially for markets then?
First, for markets, you know, the uncertainty might create some, again, turmoil for French assets. still, as I said, I mean, there is no program. Many of the big measures, in terms of budget, Mr. Bardella, the head of, the president of the Rassemblement National, has said that many of these measures will not be taken because of the dire situation of the budget in France. So that's good for markets, but we don't know what is going to really happen. So, but still, it's something that the market will take, with a lot of caution, and therefore that will hamper, maybe French assets. Not that much. We have seen what we have seen is not much so far. So we are not that worried about that. It depends of what type of policy, or particularly what kind of confrontation we might have with the rest of Europe if that were to happen.
So still quite a bit of uncertainty there. Sébastien Paris-Orvis, Director of Research at La Banque Postale Asset Management, thank you so much for your time. So there you have it. Still a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions, very unclear what the National Assembly could look like in just 1 week. But certainly, did that gamble pay off for President Macron? It doesn't look like it at the moment. Steve.
I'll pick it up, Charlotte. Thank you so much for bringing us the coverage this morning. And for full coverage of France's parliamentary election, including the weekend's results, as well as next Sunday's vote, and all the horse trading in between, you can head online to CNBC.com. Elsewhere, the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge, the core personal consumption expenditures price index, slowed to its lowest annual level in more than 3 years in May, providing a boost to policymakers ahead of their next meeting at the end of the month. Core PCE was up 2.6% from a year ago, while it rose just 0.1% for the month. Despite the positive signs, Richmond Fed President Thomas Barkin says inflation is proving resilient to rate increases. San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly told CNBC she's preparing for a range of outcomes.
Right now, I'm looking at scenarios. If inflation stays stickier than we would like or comes down more slowly than expected, then of course we'd have to hold higher for longer. That is our commitment. If, on the other hand, we get inflation coming down like it did at the end of last year and the labor market is staying intact or falters, we can actually adjust policy to respond to that.
Markets did flip lower in the Friday session. Don't forget it was end of quarter, end of half, end of month, and as a result, a bit of window dressing taking place. The major boards in reverse, the tech-heavy Nasdaq in particular leading the way lower, down 0.7%. But in the context of what have been supersized gains on the market, on the Nasdaq up to the tune of 18% so far for the year. On the S&P 500, about 14.5%, a little bit less on the likes of the Dow, rallying about 3.8% so far for the year. So there was a little bit of movement, but don't forget tech has very much been out in front, and you can see that expressed through the sector, but also through the basket of semiconductor stocks. The size of that rallied to the tune of 49%. So you can see why there are a few moving pieces with a little bit of shuffling around portfolios for the end of the half. Let me take you to Treasuries. A lot of data points we're watching this week, and don't forget it's also a holiday shortened trading week. We've got 4th of July Independence Day, so markets this week will be trading perhaps on some thin liquidity and going into a shortened week. We will also have some data points, manufacturing, services read, but then the non-farm payrolls, very pivotal still for markets looking for some form of slowing in the labour market. On the yields, we're 4.39 on the 10-year at this stage, 4.73 at the short end. To the dollar trade on the back of that slight improvement on the yields, we've got cable perched at 126.5 plus. So that is a stronger trade, up about 0.1%, clearly in focus as we count down to the UK election later this week. Euro dollar, we've also got some strength there. The market trying to read in on the French election as we also get set for the second round. You can see we're currently perched 107.5 roughly on euro dollar. That's a pickup of about 30% plus on euro dollar trade. Dollar yen supported, and all last week we're talking about intervention. We're 161 plus in early trade. Small strength moving into that greenback trade versus the Japanese yen. Dollar also firm against the yuan. Want to take you to Asia. Hong Kong markets are not trading today. They're shut. So we've got green, though, bouncing onto the Chinese and the South Korean market. Just faint green when it comes to the Kospi. On the other major boards, though, Shenzhen trades lower, down 0.2, and we're giving back some territory too on the Japanese stock market. Steve.
It's all about elections. Thank you, Karen. Yes, coming up on the show, the countdown is on To the UK's general election on the aforementioned Independence Day, Thursday, with polls suggesting one of the largest swings in British political history. Also ahead, the US President, Mr. Biden, looks set to resist calls to step aside as the Democrats' presidential nominee following a stumbling performance in Thursday's debate. We'll have more reaction to the first round of the French presidential elections too, with the WTO's former Director General and VP at the Paris Peace Forum, Pascal Lamy. He will join us at 09:30 Central European Time.
Ambition to me is about doing better.
I think ambition creates a pathway.
Best advice I can give someone starting off a career is don't have a career, have lots of careers, try loads of different things.
Talk to people and put your ambition out there.
I don't feel that I've hit peak ambition because it's a learning journey.
CNBC is where ambition meets opportunity. What does living ambitiously mean to you? Hear it from our CNBC anchors, reporters and global business leaders on CNBC.com.
It is 3 days until the UK goes to the polls in a general election vote that, if opinion polling proves accurate, could see one of the largest swings in British political history, with the opposition Labour Party potentially victorious at the ballot box for the first time since 2005. Let's get out to Arabile for more. Arabile, it is the final stretch of the campaign trail. Just talk us through the tactics as we count down to voting day.
Yeah, there's so many permutations really that could really come to the fore here, Karen. And really as we head towards the final stretch or towards election day then on Thursday, one needs to make note, of course, of just how things could ultimately swing, just particularly between then one could look at the Reform Party or Reform UK as it were, perhaps Conservatives as well, and how that may be a difficult one. Let's remember, just according to polls then, we do have around a 20% figure then for the Conservative Party. Reform have actually slipped down to around 16%. Actually had a little bit more of a lead on the Conservative Party at some point during the polling then. But of course, a few issues have actually come up for the Reform Party as well, which included racial slurs, even against Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. You even had one member of Reform UK actually switch to the Conservatives, saying then that he does not want to be part of a racist party then. So all of those issues had certainly still been in play then for Reform. No word on, or rather word from Nigel Farage, the leader then of Reform UK, saying that ultimately he would not join up with the Conservative Party. But when one goes back then to Labour Party, of course, they're looking to change things in UK politics. The first time, of course, that it would be in 14 years that they would take over then the premiership, of course, at 10 Downing Street. And while the polls certainly point towards a significant change in that political helm, the key question mark is, would Labour have done it themselves, or would it have been because Conservatives and the Conservative Party have actually shot themselves perhaps in the foot? This is ultimately, though, what Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, had to say with regards to all of that.
British people want change, but the hope has almost been kicked out. They need to be convinced that change is possible. Most of all, they need to be convinced to vote for it, because change doesn't happen unless you vote for it. Nothing is decided. Not a single vote has been won or lost, and each and every vote is out there, ready to be earned, and we must earn it.
So trying to ensure that nobody takes anything for granted ultimately at the Labour Party is what Sir Keir Starmer is trying to put forward there. According to polls, still sitting at around 42% with regards to the voting polls at present. But does that translate into the actual votes and into the actual seats then on July 4th? There's still very, very many permutations that could still come to the fore there. Question marks then for Conservatives is, have things really changed in the 14 years that they have been in power? One thing we know for sure is that the FT, as well as the Sunday Times this weekend, have actually went on to endorse the Labour Party for the first time since 2005 as well for the FT. That is going to be quite significant as well in this shift of things, just because of what it may give a sense of in terms of opinions for people who read both of those then as well. But then the Conservatives would need to put their best foot forward and say, well, we have changed things. And even though there have been a few slumps along the road, of course, we would remember all of those, with Liz Truss being a key part of that, they have ultimately, or they will feel like they have actually changed the lives of UK citizens. This is the words then from the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak with regards to how things have changed in the last 14 years.
It's a better place to live than it was in 2010. Of course, I understand that the last few years have been difficult for everyone. We had a once-in-a-century pandemic, followed by a war in Ukraine that drove up everyone's bills, and of course that's been difficult for everybody. But we've also made progress in tackling those things. Inflation back to normal, the economy growing again, wages rising, energy bills set to fall again just next week, and now we're able to start cutting people's taxes to give them financial security. So yes, of course it's been difficult, but we are now on the right track with the prospect of more tax cuts to come to give people more financial security. And that's the key choice for people at this election, building on the progress that we've made.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabile Kumete, weekdays on CNBC.